Welcome to this week's episode of Surgeon Interrupted. Today, I'm so excited to welcome one of my favorite people here on the pod, Imane Tarib, one of my favorite doctors. She's a cornea specialist, definitely ophtho expert here online and in real life. So I'm so happy to welcome you to the pod today. And of course, congratulations on your new job, Dr.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy to be talking to you today on your podcast. You know, it happens to me sometimes when I meet people that I follow in real life that I get this feeling that I can only describe as when you meet your superstar. And growing up, a superstar to me would be a singer or an actor, someone on TV. And that's how I felt when I met you. And it's even more pleasurable to be with you today on your podcast.
That's so kind, very generous. We just for everyone who missed it, we got to meet in New York City because Imane came to the book launch, and it was so fun to just celebrate in Manhattan. And again, you are Miley Cyrus in this situation, and I'm like a peon. So it was awesome. It meant a lot to get to hang out in real life.
Oh, you're too kind. We had such a blast, Sean and I. My husband is also a doctor. And I remember the exact day when I told him about you, when I found out about you online. And your first video in your car, you had much longer hair then. You were in your scrubs and you were talking about your experiences. And the way I related so much, it was so memorable. I remember it was the first topic I had to discuss with Sean whenever we met in the weekend because we were doing distance relationship. So, of course, when you had your book launch party and we knew what it was about, we decided to go. We were very excited. We were so happy to meet you, both of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean, your journey in medicine, starting in Morocco and then coming to the US as an IMG, right? It's spanned many chapters, many locations, and I would love if you could just really run us through that journey, introduce the whole process to all of our listeners today.
Of course, brace yourself. The thing is that in Morocco, things are different on many levels, and it would start with the way you actually access medical school, which is straight out of high school. There is an entry exam, a national entry exam to all the medical schools, and you have to have a certain score in your high school to be able to take that exam. So it's very, very competitive. You go into medical school, and it's 7 years long. So you do the two first years are courses. You study in the university, you take your exams, and then starting the third year, you start doing clerkships in the mornings, and the afternoon is classes until fifth year. Then you decide whether to take an exam to become a university hospital intern, or you become an intern for other hospitals, regional hospitals. And becoming a university hospital intern came with a lot of advantages. And so the exam was much, much harder because they had to be super selective. They had a very small number of positions for that. And I remember when I decided to take that, it was mostly because it would allow me to choose the specialty that I would want.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that at that particular stage, I actually wanted to do ENT, Francis May, believe it or not.
Wow.
And we can get back to that later if it is of any interest. But anyway, I thought, oh my goodness, ENT is very, very competitive. Let me do this internship thing, spend 2 years of my life in the hospital to make sure that I can actually access ENT. So you do the 2 years of internship. Then, along with those 2 years of internship, which is very, very hard, you're literally living in the hospital. You're on call every other day between the emergency room and the department where you are. And the 2 years are, you spend them in a way where every 6 months you're at a different department, one surgical, one medical, one has got to be OB-GYN or pediatrics, and then one is within the specialty of your interests. And so that is what I started with. I started with ENT. Anyway, long story short, you're done with internship. In parallel, you are preparing a thesis project. And I did a thesis project with anesthesia back then. And you present your thesis at the end, and then you get your MD degree. So after that, things changed, and I wanted to do ophthalmology as specialty. And I particularly wanted to do it somewhere that had high volume of different subspecialties within ophthalmology. And why is that important? It's because ophthalmology training in Morocco is pretty long. It's 5 years, and there are no fellowships, which are trainings in subspecialty. And I knew since the beginning that I wanted to do complex anterior segment and cornea surgery. So I needed to be in a department that would have access to a lot of trauma cases and all the good stuff. So I moved from the city where I did my medical school for 7 years to Rabat, the capital, to do residency. And the reason why I mentioned this is because in Morocco, wherever you do your medical school, that's where you stay for residency. So that in itself was quite challenging. I had to start residency for 3 months in nephrology because that was the only place that had allowed me preemptively to leave once I get my paperwork to go to
Wow.
residency. So the plan was never to leave Morocco. It was to do ophthalmology, to have my practice there, and to basically have my life in Morocco. And so what got me to becoming an IMG without making it in painful details and painfully long is that in the last year of my residency, I met my husband now, my current husband,
My current husband, oh my
my
gosh.
current husband. And so many times I say certain things. It's just because that is how I translate it from Moroccan Arabic. But then I know that in English it has a different connotation. So I got to be careful here. Anyway, I meet my husband, and it was the kind of meeting where, we fell in love, and I was so in love, and I thought, I want this guy in my life. But as much as I loved him, I knew there is no way I'm giving up the plan of becoming an ophthalmologist. And I was this close. After 13 years, I was like months away from becoming an ophthalmologist.
Mhm.
And so after dating for a few months, he proposes to me. When he proposes to me, I'm like, okay, wait, we got to take a beat here. We have to make a plan. So I look into the options of how we can be together. And long story short, it's impossible for him to practice in Morocco. And for me, there was the IMG path. And that's how I came here.
Okay, full body goosebumps. I'm definitely a romantic at heart. I'm very interested in, like, the rom-com of your lives.
Yeah.
You had shared with me in real life a little bit of how you guys met, but I do think it's a really beautiful story. Can you tell us about, like, the courtship time? Because, basically, I just wanna say I can relate somewhat because Colin and I met in September of my 4th year of medical school. I was on an away rotation at
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt. He lived in Nashville. He had moved there from Boston like 2 years before. So we happened to meet on dating apps, which I know, is part of y'all's
Yeah.
origin story as well. We just but that's magical. We met on dating apps. Colin and I never would have crossed paths. I mean, I have to believe we would have crossed paths some other mystical way, but
Yeah.
on Bumble, we met in Nashville. We went on our first date on a Wednesday, and I was like, I have a week and a half left on this rotation. And
Oh,
we but I mean on that Friday, he was like, I want to give this a real shot. I want to see you more, and I want to date for real. That March, when I found out where I was going for residency,
yeah.
he signed a lease with me. So that was at the 6-month mark, we signed a lease together to rent a house. And he was like, I'll quit my job and move to wherever you go to residency.
Oh my goodness, he's the one. I mean, people say, you'll know when you know. I used to hear this all the time, and I was
Yeah.
not a romantic. I had a rough patch in my dating life before meeting Sean, and I'm more of I'm very realistic, and I didn't
Mhm.
have a hard time breaking up with people before, and no regrets. It's just my mentality.
Yeah.
Once I felt something off, I would just break up and move on.
Yeah.
But with Sean, although logically and realistically things felt that they were not going to go anywhere, I had a strong feeling and I followed my heart. And so, like you said, we met on the dating app, and he was actually visiting Morocco, and I was in the north of Morocco for one weekend when he had just traveled to southern Spain for that one weekend, which put us on the map close enough to actually match on this app, which is Bumble. And then he was done with Morocco. I was there just for a weekend. I was in my residency. So I was just going to blow off some steam with my best friend. Shout out to Esma. She's always there in all the most important part of my life. And so that's how we met. So I will go back to Rabat where I did my residency. We start texting. I find him very interesting, very different in his approach. Obviously, I love Bumble because as a woman, I get the first say.
Yes.
And I like that very much. And he was not tacky. He was not cheesy. He was not coming off too strong. He was interesting, and I really enjoyed the conversations with him. And so at first, we were, of course, thinking, "Oh, so where are you? Where are you? How did this work? Are we going to meet? What's going on?" So I realized he's in Spain, and then going to go back to the U.S. right after, and that I live in Morocco. So he hits me with one day. He says, "So do you ever come to the U.S.?" I said, "I don't know. I've only been once before for a conference. I may come back in the future, unsure." So he said, "Well, if you come, we should meet." And I said, well, if we're still talking by then yeah, we'll meet. So he always pulls up this this
You
part of the
gotta play
conversation.
hardball. Yeah, yeah, you gotta play hardball.
And I thought it was really unlikely for me to go. But then a few days after matching with him, I get an email about a paper that I had submitted in my research fellowship being accepted at the American Academy of Ophthalmology and that I had to go and present it in person. And I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's aura is really strong. So it looks like it's going to happen sooner than later. We had matched in June and the conference was in October. And that's when we met for the first time. Isn't it crazy?
That is insane, and I will say, having met Sean, like, he has a gravitas, you know? Like, I really
Yeah.
I agree with you. He has aura. Did you guys talk much before October then? Because then you knew you were coming, and so you guys could
Yeah. We
chat
talked
about that.
every single day. Literally every single day. He was living in LA, so the time difference was almost 12 hours. And so his morning would be my night and vice versa. And every time I would come back, I remember myself driving from residency, texting him that I'm leaving. And I know that by the time I get home, we'll be talking while I'm making my dinner and while I'm doing my laundry and until I go to bed sometimes. He had just, actually, Francis, he had just finished fellowship and he was starting his very first job. So he was going through what I'm going through right now. He had a chill
Right.
lifestyle,
Yeah.
was just starting out, a lot of free time. So we did talk every day. I found his voice to be very soothing, I must say. That was one very important factor. But he's also a person with a lot of I want to call it silent character, but it doesn't do it justice. But he has a lot of character without being too much all over the place like I am, for instance, sometimes. And I
Yeah,
really
like
admire that.
depth without
Depth.
being flashy. But I agree with you. I mean,
Exactly.
that's yeah. I feel like I can totally see that, and I love it. I think flash is good. Obviously, I'm pretty flashy. I think Colin
Right
has a
there with
lot
you.
of silent character, you know.
Yeah. And they say opposites attract. And I feel like we are opposites in so many ways. But to go back to your question, during the 1 year, I got the most commitment out of a person that I had ever gotten before from people who were right there next to me. So within 1 year, we managed to meet 5 times. And that's incredible. Being in an international distance relationship, me being in residency, it did help that he was an attendant. He was getting paid. So financially speaking, it helped,
Yeah.
making him able to fly out and things like that. So at the 1 year mark, I go back again to the same conference in the US in San Francisco. And after the conference, he took his board exam to become board certified.
Mhm.
And then the next day, we meet to celebrate my very first anniversary ever, by the way. I had never been with somebody for a year before.
Oh,
Yeah, and he proposes on our anniversary. So it was like boom, 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 boom.
that
Okay,
is
what's going on?
crazy. Oh, that's a big weekend.
Oh,
That's a
yeah,
lot.
totally, totally. So I got to meet his parents, and you know, you guys in the US are used to this. People propose, they go down on one knee, the girl says yes, there's a photographer, all this stuff. I never thought of that being part of my life for two reasons. One, before I met Sean, I thought, you know what? I'm done with these boys. I'm going to become a badass ophthalmologist and I'm going to go do a subspecialty training somewhere and I'm going to live it up and travel the world. I'm going to be single and happy and take care of my nieces and nephews. And then when I met him, I'm like, oh, maybe I could go down this marriage route after all. And then number two, in Morocco, that's not how you get married. The guy's family comes to the girl's family and they ask for her hand, and it's a whole thing, and the family's
Mhm.
involved. So when Sean proposed to me, I said, yes, of course. I said, but hold on, you do know you're going to have to go talk to my parents and all. And we chatted like a couple weeks after. So it was beautiful. And he always asks me to share the video from the proposal. And I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it a little bit more.
I'm obsessed. I mean, just even I would love to see the footage, but I will say, first of all, I need to call out, those dreams that you had of becoming a badass ophthalmologist, subspecialty
Yeah.
trained and be killing it. Like all your dreams came true. You
Thank
are
you.
that. And I do think it's cool. It's always like really wonderful to see when women do that, like achieve all of their professional goals. And then, yes, absolutely. It's the cherry on top. When
Yes,
a person finds like the love of their life alongside that, wonderful. But,
absolutely.
it's cool. I feel like you didn't lose sight of, or it sounds like, at least to me, like compromise on those big
Yeah.
dreams. And so this is just like such a beautiful engagement story. When Colin proposed to me, it's funny because, like, I will say, I knew. It was at the 2-year mark, so we'd been together for
Okay.
2 years, and I'm pretty type A. Like, I'm pretty vocal about what I like and what I want, so I do feel like we had more of the joint decisions were made. We
Mhm.
knew very early on. I mean, if at 6 months we didn't think we'd get married someday, I don't think Colin would have quit his job and moved across the
Moved in
country.
with you,
Yeah,
yeah.
for us to, like, rent together. We adopted our cat. She was from the streets of Kansas City, and we got her at, like, 9 months of dating. Like, we got
Oh,
our first that's our
no,
first
that is
baby.
commitment.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like, we did get adopt a joint baby
Yeah.
and all this stuff. So, anyway, at the 2-year mark, we, like, decided, "Okay, this would be, like, a fun time for us to get engaged, this, and this." And he asked my mom. My dad passed away about 14 years ago now, and so
I'm
my
sorry for
mom.
your loss.
Thank you, thanks. Yeah, it was just the year before I entered med school. It was, like, during med school interviews, actually, and it
Oh
was
my
sudden because it was
goodness, that
sudden
must have been
cardiac
tough.
death. Yeah, and,
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
thank you. Yeah. We definitely, so unfortunately, Colin could not ask him, but Colin did. So he called my mom like a month beforehand, and they have a lovely relationship. They're wonderful. And he called her like a month beforehand, and he was like, respectfully, like I want to propose to Frances May. Love both you guys, and she was just the way he tells it, because I wasn't on this call. The way he tells it, she just was like, yeah, like whatever, whatever. Of course,
That is a
my mom's
solid
Shanghai.
move, though. That is a solid move. I love that he gave her that respect.
Yes, yes, but it's funny because unlike, I think, like, other moms, which are like, "Oh my gosh, amazing," like, yes, of
Uh,
course, and, like, she just was like, "Yeah," like, she was just like, "Obviously," and she was
it
also
only
like,
makes
"Why are you
sense.
asking me?" Because I do think that, yeah, it's funny too, like, culturally, like, it's not quite that way, so I think it was like, yeah, like, you don't need my
Yeah.
whatever, and then it's so funny because I will tell you, she called me immediately. She hung
She
up and she
told you?
called me. Yeah, she called me. She hung up and she called me. She was like, "Hey, Colin wants to, like, get married." I was like, "Yeah, sounds good," and she's like, "Y'all do whatever you want." And so thank God this
Yeah.
was anyway more of a joint venture, because, like, you would
Yes.
hate to have your engagement spoiled in that way, but I do
Oh, for
think it's
sure.
funny too how every culture, like, treats the engagement dance, the song and dance of it, like, very differently.
Yeah, but that's a beautiful story. I'm glad that he told her, before he did it. I feel like it's very important to give the parents respect in that moment. At least for me, I knew that it wasn't part of what Sean knew or what it wasn't part of what people did here. And
Mhm.
sometimes he feels more American than Chinese and he goes back and forth. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But the fact that he knew the importance of involving the family and how to approach them was very important to me. So I always appreciate stories like that when it involves the parents because it's a big deal. You probably know in Chinese culture as much as it is in Moroccan culture, it's the most
Mhm.
important
Yeah, the
thing.
family, yeah, yeah, and, you're marrying the family, but I do feel really blessed because even though we're a small family, I know Colin and my mom are as much family to each other as any of us are
Yeah.
to one another, so, like, it is very, very beautiful to, like, be at that point in life, like, because I do think that my mom and I, like, there are probably times where we were like, "It'll just be us forever," like,
Yeah.
no who would ever be family to us. Once we
Yeah. And you
lost
got the cat too now.
the cat, yep, and then a dog the year after that. So,
Oh my
yeah,
God,
but that's what
really?
I mean, like, when we got engaged, we already had a mortgage and a cat and a dog.
You're already
I
there.
mean, yeah, we were, like, very committed. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Okay, I love all of it. So when you guys got engaged, was that, like, in SF then? Or you guys were in SoCal by then?
It was in Santa Monica Beach.
Where on
Yeah.
I
On
know
that
that beach
little
pretty
walk.
well.
On
On the
that little
boardwalk?
Yeah, on the boardwalk because the year what
Oh,
had
like, on the
happened? Oh, no.
pier going out? Is
On the
that right?
pier, that's the word, yes. So on the pier, and
Oh,
after he proposed, there was an Asian guy playing an instruments of that song, The Moon Represents My Heart. Do you know this song? I'll have to
I
send it to
I
you.
don't, but it sounds beautiful.
And it's a Chinese song. So anyway, it
He
was
just
such a
happened to be there?
magical moment. He just happened to be there. It was after he proposed. We went for dinner. We went back on the pier for a walk, and there was a guy playing this song, and it's like It's been our wedding song, our first dance song. I can sometimes it sounds like I'm singing the song. I don't know any word, but it's in my head like the Moroccan anthem, you know?
That's
And it all
gorgeous.
happened in Santa
Wow.
Monica Pier. Yeah.
Oh, what a cool spot. Yeah, the pier is gorgeous. Santa Monica, definitely one of my favorite places in the world, so that's
Yeah,
really
it's
cool.
it's a cool spot and it was at sunset. He did very, very well.
Yeah, gotta get the golden hour, that's amazing. Well, okay, I know that we spent a lot of time, but I do think that this is important. I think it's important because I know that you do so much work educating people about eyes and corneas, all of your expertise, all of your professional and medical expertise. You do a lot of, like, advocacy and kind of, like, inspirational. I really do think, like, this inspirational, you live life authentically, and you're a wonderful role model to women everywhere of, like, all ages,
Thank you,
myself very
Francis.
much included. Yeah, but I think that what's cool too is, like, that's not all, right? None of us are, like, just a surgeon or, like,
Of
just an
course.
educator and role model, and so I think it's really cool to hear about, like, all this other life that you have lived alongside a very long and grueling training process and to get where you are today. But I think that what would be wonderful is if you could speak to, because I know, like, modern day, so you are in your new attending job now and you're, like, very freshly into it. And so, in terms of what it looked like coming to the US and doing multiple fellowships and getting to here, what was that journey like? Can you speak to any elements of it that you think are, like, interesting blueprints for other people or maybe inspo for other people? Because the last thing I'll say about it is just that it is easy for all of us. I fall into this trap all the time of, like, I look at you and I'm like, wow, this person's just killing it. She's an attending, she's successful, she's in a beautiful marriage. We went into a
Excuse
deeper
me.
dive into all of that, and it's like, okay, she has it all, and, like, kind of, and you make it look easy. You definitely do. That's my personal opinion. Like, you make it look all really easy, and
Mm,
I think that what's helpful to especially young people is for them to, like, get the curtain pulled back a little bit on, like, every person I know who is successful, there were all sorts of crazy times and years in between, we just didn't see those, you know,
yeah.
which I'm gonna paraphrase, which is that, like, if you work really hard for 10 years, then you'll look like an overnight success.
Exactly. Yes, I've seen something in that sense as well many, many times. And something that says you work so hard for so long and then it all happens at once or something like that. So I get what you mean. And you're right. And when it comes to sharing about the journey, I did realize this particular point that you mentioned maybe a couple years ago. I remember I was a fellow
Mhm.
at UIC. So it was maybe a couple years ago. I realized that a lot of the messages that I was receiving from medical students or IMGs or people even in other fields, they were asking me questions not about the technicalities of it, but more like, how are you doing it and smiling? How are you doing
Yeah.
it and being happy? How is
Yeah.
this? You make it look so easy. And I realized, oh my goodness, I really hope I'm not, haven't fallen in the trap of the toxic positivity or something that could be maybe harmful to other people where they would say, she can do it and I can't do it. So maybe I suck. So then I remember I started to share a little bit about both sides because at
Mhm.
first, when I started sharing on social media, Francis, it was because I couldn't find any other IMG out there that looked like me. I couldn't find, I'm Arab, I'm North African, I'm Muslim. I studied medicine in French and all the IMGs that I could find, especially on YouTube, talking about their journey, which is a very complex journey for someone coming outside of the USA. I just want to preface this. It took me months just to understand how I am going to be able to sit for the USMLE Step 1 exam, just so you know. So I couldn't find anybody who had similar hurdles, so I started sharing. And I started sharing about parts of the journey, how other people maybe can save time on researching what is the next step to take. And then after that, it was so hard. I started sharing, and at so many points, I thought, I'm not going to be able to make this work. And then I would
Mhm.
succeed. And then I would share about how I succeeded because I know maybe other people are going through those stages where they're like, my goodness, this is so hard, or I failed once or twice already. Maybe this is not meant for me. So I want to show them that no, keep going, it's going to work. And then I realized that by showing that sunshine and that good side of the good reward at the end of it is not enough. So there was a post that I remember, people say I went viral because of numbers. That one did not go the most viral in terms of numbers, but the engagement that I got out of it in terms of direct messaging and comments that really spoke to me
Mhm.
was the most viral to me ever. And that was a post where I just sat down and I said, hey, maybe you know me. My name is Iman. Maybe you know me from my posts about my publications, about doing these exams to become an IMG, blah, blah, blah. But here's what you don't know. And I put a big text and I called it "Welcome to my museum of failures. All the things that have gone, some of the things that have gone wrong.
Mhm.
And I feel that was the first time that I felt what I'm doing here is right. The feedback from people that I got was all about, oh my goodness, I was just about to give up, but now I want. Oh my goodness, I thought I was stupid that I'm not getting it, but now I know it's not just me. The same way I felt, Francis, when I saw your video about a particular topic, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's not because it's just me. It's a systemic issue, you know? So you like to see that you relate to these people that you sometimes maybe idealize. And so I forgot what your question was, but
Yeah,
that was a
no.
very important point.
I love that, and I love museums of failure, like, that's very beautiful, and totally, I do not think that you're toxic positivity. I think that what's interesting is that we all have different dispositions, and, for instance, the same way that you make everything look easy, I make everything look hard. I don't smile very much, I'm not, like, a bubbly person, and also, I'm one of those people who's not, like, a silent soldier just, like, fighting the good fight, like, I'm like, no, I wanna I need to
I'll
vent
talk
about
about
this
it.
or I need to yeah, like, I need to talk about it because, the injustice of it is just gonna grind my gears for 100 years either way. And I think that, like, both are very necessary, but what's beautiful about it, like, probably almost in the same way that then when I show up and I'm like, "Here's how I, a human being who has literally been called, like, Eeyore before," which is, like, this depressed I don't know, what is he, an elephant? I don't know. Eeyore's like an old cartoon character. He's just, like, down in the dumps all the time. Like, I
Oh,
almost have that kind of a personality, and so I have to work at and be conscientious of, like, "Hey, I wanna call out all the positive stuff here. I wanna flag these are things that worked for me to have a different outlook on life, and, like, these are
mhm.
things that are small adjustments that I've made that help me show up from a place of gratitude, even in a broken system or even when X and Y and Z is against you." So but in that same way, it's so powerful when a person who is, like, human sunshine just genuinely, this isn't toxic positivity when someone's, like, really bubbly and smiley and they're able
Yeah.
to see the good in places, but it also is then super powerful to be like, so not every day is rainbows and butterflies, and it is inevitable that we have so many failures before we get to the success. I
Yeah.
think when I was a pre-med and a med student, I was not aware that failure was literally inevitable and necessary. I
Oh
think
my
that
goodness.
alone, somebody telling me that, I would have been like, "Oh, cool," and then when I experienced failure, it wouldn't have broken my heart into a million pieces.
100%. I love how you brought this up. This is one of my main pillars of messaging when it comes to social media. And in real life as well, whenever I'm talking to IMGs or medical students, which I love doing, by the way. Failure is part of the process. We see it now on Instagram posts and it's more talked about and it's great, but that wasn't the case to, like you said, to you or me, growing up and going through this whole process. Was always a good student. You have to pass your exams. To me, thinking of failure is like that is the end of life. It was so
Yeah.
inadmissible to me that failure could be part of the journey. So, funny enough, I come to the US. I decide to study for USMLE Step 1, which is the very first part of this journey. As an IMG, you have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do it. If any IMGs are listening, get it out of the way. Just do it and deal with it. And the rest is going to be so much easier. So, anyway, I go to study medicine, all of medicine that I hadn't touched for the last 5 to 6 years because I had been an ophthalmologist in residency. You go
Wow.
back to biochemistry and pharmacology and immunology and biostatistics and the legal things in the US that you have never been exposed to before in English when I had studied in French before. And it's a mess. It's a mess. So initially, I think I can do it in 6 months. I extended to 8, then to 10, then to 12. I end up taking the USMLE after 18 months. And that is all I do, Francis. I move to the US. I go from a very rich life, rich in friends and family and activity and food and being in Morocco and all the good stuff, to a life where I live in the middle of Ohio. My husband is a neurosurgeon who works 12, 14 hours a day. I barely see him during the week. In the weekend, he just wants to catch up with sleep. So I am there studying for the USMLE all day, every day. I kid you not, the last year I had this crazy regimen of waking up at 5, studying until 7:30. He wakes up. We at least see each other, say hi. He leaves to work. I go to the medical school library in Toledo. I spend the whole day. It closes at midnight. I come back home at midnight and repeat. It was insane. It was some insane stuff. So I do all of this. Then I go to take the USMLE Step 1. Then I take it. Then I take 2 days off. Then I start studying for USMLE Step 2. 4 weeks later, I get the news that I actually failed the USMLE Step 1 that I spent 1 year and a half studying for. And I call my dad. My dad is an amazing, powerful force in my life and in my journey in medical school. My dad is of the mentality of just do it. Just put your head down and do it. Hard work will pay off. He will always encourage me for hard work. And my mom is more about gratitude and believing in yourself, and nothing is worth having you beat yourself up. So this combination, I feel like, has always been very powerful in pushing me forward. So I talk to my dad and I say, hey, I actually failed. And for one time in my life, he has no words. He doesn't know what to say, which was very painful to me. So he says, I think you should take a beat here and think about what the next step would be. And it wasn't the same encouraging words that I had known from him and other people before. And so because he doesn't know what it is all, he just knows that his daughter had to sit for 18 months and dedicate her life to something. And for the first time, she makes all these huge efforts. She doesn't succeed. Maybe she's never going to succeed. So I sit down with myself in our living room, and I remember very, very well. Sean comes home at around 11 p.m. I sat on that couch, Francis, from like 3 or 4 p.m. You get the results really early in the morning. So I was walking around and talking on the phone and trying to figure out the next plan. And then I sit on the couch until 11 p.m. in the dark, just thinking, ruminating. And that is truly where everything changed to me. I just decided the way I was thinking about failure all my life changed in that one day, because my brain would not accept the idea of giving up. I was thinking about changing career, Francis. I was thinking about doing other things and starting new schooling and forgetting about not only ophthalmology, but medicine that day. And then, I don't know, something in me just decided, you know what? The option of doing it again is on the table. I'm not unable to take it again. So let's just do this. And that is truly when I realized the utter importance of knowing that failure is part of the journey. It's just there to redirect you, or because something. Now let's go to the mom's part where this thing happened. I'm sure it's for the best. You got to be grateful, because maybe if you had passed, you wouldn't have gotten to where you really want to go. So it's a combo of different ways of thinking and ways of pushing yourself. But failure has got to be highlighted as not only an important part of the process, but sometimes as the way to actually get you where you want to go. Because timing is important too, right? So maybe timing of passing that exam was not going to lead me to where I am today, which I'm very grateful for. So as someone who's present on social media, and I know that my audience has a lot of people who are going through this process, although the main thing about me and my personality is really being motivating and positive, and that's really how I am in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get sometimes really annoying with my friends or my husband or my family. I say, listen, I know it's annoying, but I promise you it's going to work, and keep going. But I'm also very much aware of how important it is now to share that, hey, failure is part of it. You got to accept it. You got to be looking forward to failing. Because guess what? If you're not going to fail, it means you're maybe not making great efforts towards something big. Just whatever label you can put on things to keep you going to something that inside of you is your calling, I would say just do that.
So beautifully said. I could not agree more. And I think that the inevitability of failure, that's freeing for people like us. Like when you come up and you're just like, I always have to be the best. I always need to succeed. One failure might ruin my whole career and my whole life. That type of thinking literally sets up intelligent people to fail. And so,
100%.
wow, thank you for sharing. I feel like I was holding my breath the whole time that you were describing, the studying, the 18 months and the day of finding out the results.
Yeah.
First, I think I need to just shout out what you did is Herculean and incredible.
Yeah, definitely the journey of being and I mean, listen, I remember the day I also realized that, hey, I'm not just IMG, I'm actually an immigrant. I never even realized. It was never part of my plans for my life to become an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
My life, I had great life in Morocco. I had zero reasons to leave,
Mm-hmm.
literally.
Well,
And I
one,
always,
then one.
yes,
One reason to
exactly.
leave.
I mean, before
Yeah,
Sean,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
never my plan. I always thought
Wow.
about going abroad to doing subspecialty training. I was looking into Europe a lot because it's closer. The US I thought is great because it had some great programs, but I always thought, it's going to require the USMLE, so maybe not. So you come here, you become an immigrant. It's not that easy. And with, a lot of people think that you leave your country to come to the US, particularly for a greater, better life. That may be true, but it doesn't mean it's easy. These parts of the journey that you don't see, like for instance, I was lucky enough that I knew English before coming here, but there are so many IMGs that come here, like you said, and they have to not only learn medicine again in a different language, they have to first learn that language. And guess what, Francis, they actually do it. They do it. That is incredibly admirable. And so we got to give these people more praise for what they go
Flowers.
through.
Yeah, yeah. All the flowers for that. I'm just
Excuse
saying,
me.
and I even, like Shanghainese is my first language. That is what we speak at home every day. I
Nice.
just feel like I have an appreciation for this because my medical Chinese is still none. And that's with, I grew up with it as the primary language in my household, went to Chinese school as a kid, and I still have never scraped. I mean, they'd send me home day one. They'd be like, get out of here.
It's a learning curve for sure. And then add to that the fact that whenever you deal with patients, you want to have a type of bonding. You need a
Hmm.
good, efficient communication. So you have to understand their background. And, coming from Morocco, for instance, I know Moroccan patients of all
Yeah, and
kinds and
culture.
types. Yeah, and the culture behind their way they think and the way they adhere or not to the medication. So I can speak to that. So when you come here as an IMG doctor, you also have to learn about these things. It's not just about the science, it's about how to speak and how to explain and how to empower your patients. And that's a whole other set of skills that, I personally think is very, very important. I don't think people give it enough importance, but in the US, you have people from all around the world, and you have to find a way to relate to all those backgrounds because you're going to see patients from everywhere. Anyway, I digress. That's just something that I'm passionate about.
No, it's beautiful. I love that you're putting this messaging and philosophy out into the world because I think it's much needed. I guess, as we kind of wrap up, though, I would love to hear about like this last stretch of the journey because how many years ago was that? The USMLE Step 1 to now, and if you could just share with us a little bit about, your fellowship life and then bring us to present day.
Yeah, thank you so much. I always love to talk about this journey, and sometimes I feel like it gets a little bit too much. So, thank you for allowing me the space to do that. And I hope that it will give inspiration to someone who needs it, who's hearing it right now. So, I moved to the US on January 4th, 2020. I came here. I maybe spent a couple of days getting over the jet lag, and I started studying immediately. I took step one in March or April of 2021.
Hmm.
And then in the meantime, I was doing a fellowship in New Jersey. I would go for a couple of weeks, every few weeks, in a private practice with a great couple of doctors. Shout out to them, Dr. Parex, Dr. J, and Dr. Swati. They are the first people who gave me an opportunity to work with them when I came here. We worked on cool projects in digital health, in glaucoma, and diabetic retinopathy. It was a great time. My first time being exposed to the American health system. And then after that, while I'm doing the exams, I'm networking and trying to meet people and going to. I remember the first conference after COVID was AACRS in Vegas, and I went there, and I was so adamant on finding a research fellowship as an academic center.
Hmm.
And I talked to everybody, and I would DM people, "Hey, you're at the conference. Let's meet up. Let's talk. Let's this, let's that." So anyway, I meet a great person that ends up connecting me to somebody. So I do my first research fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic from June 22 to June 23. Yes, that's correct. June 22, June 23, I do a research fellowship in refractive surgery and corneal biomechanics. And during that fellowship, I managed to clear my step two and do my OET exam. And then I applied for fellowship. So the fellowship
Hmm.
application process is also a match process. It's called SF Match for
Hmm.
ophthalmology fellowships. So I do that. And I had already actually applied to residency before. So let me take a step back because that's very important for IMGs. When I came to the US, I had no clue that I could actually be able to work here without repeating my residency. So that was my only plan, was to apply for residency. When I applied to residency programs, 121 of them, only one gave me an interview. And I did the interview and it went great. And so the match was going to be in February, the match results. And in December, the results of the fellowships match from the year before came out. When they came out, I learned that there are unfilled positions, and I thought, wow, I didn't know there would be unfilled positions in fellowship. So I started asking people around, and they're like, you can apply to unfilled positions in fellowship as a fully trained international ophthalmologist. And if you do
Mm.
2 to 3 years of these fellowships, then you are able to get an unrestricted license. And why is it 2 to 3? Because some states would require 2 years of clinical fellowships, some years would require 3 years of clinical fellowships. But as a fully trained ophthalmologist, you can become licensed and practice in the United States with this alternative pathway.
I
So I
didn't know
learned all
that.
of this. Yes. And I try to share about this as much as possible because there are a lot of fully trained ophthalmologists who are IMGs as well. And that is one other way to do it. So I could either bet on the one interview that I had for residency and do residency all over again. In addition, I always knew I was going to do cornea fellowship, or I had to decide maybe to try my luck with the unfilled positions, because even if I hadn't applied for the match for the fellowships, I was eligible because I had all the requirements to
Mhm.
email people and say, hey, you have unfilled positions, take me, please. So I decide before I do that, I have to withdraw from the residency match. So I withdraw from the residency match. It was a hard decision, but I do that. And then I email all the programs that had unfilled positions, and I end up matching in a great fellowship in Chicago, which I go to the following year. That was my first clinical fellowship in the US. So I do that. And then during that year, because I knew I wanted to have more of a flexibility, I wanted to do 2 years of fellowship. Oh, by the way, some states can also accept 1 year of fellowship. So it's 1 to 3 years. It's just
Oh,
always been
wow.
2 to 3 in my head.
Yeah.
So I decided I want to do a second fellowship, and I apply all around the country. I applied to both cornea and glaucoma because they're both anterior segment surgery. I wanted to give myself more chance to get interviews more than the experience I had had before. So I apply and I travel. I had maybe 14 interviews. It was incredible. I was so happy. I was traveling around, taking all the time off I could take from
Mhm.
that fellowship to go interview. It was an exciting process. I end up matching in 0 place. So I don't match. In a couple of minutes, I decide, okay, the unfilled position plan again. Let's do
Yep.
this. Let's wait for the unfilled positions to come out. And they did. And I end up matching in a great fellowship, great place for the following year, which is when I went to Florida. It was the #1 eye institute in the country. It's called Bascom Palmer Eye Institute. I was in disbelief. I was just like, this is the best
Maybe
case scenario.
worked out better than you could have initially planned.
Exactly. That's exactly how it felt. So I went and I did the second fellowship. And then during this last year of fellowship, I was interviewing for jobs. I knew that I wanted to be with my husband in the same place. That's the #1 criteria. I wanted a job in which I get to practice my cornea surgery skills. So, not a job in which I would only be able to do comprehensive ophthalmology. And I was so exhausted from the long training. I didn't care whether it's academic or private. I just wanted an easy life. That's truly what I wanted when I was looking for jobs. And then throughout the process, I was very close to signing with a private practice that had found a job for Sean as well, and we were going to be together, etc.
Mm.
And then the opportunity for this academic job in which I am right now came about. And my mentor from last year, who is a female surgeon, who understands everything about all the components of how I was going to make this decision, pulled me aside and said, hey, I really think you should look into this. And here are my reasons. And I think even though you're very close to signing with this practice, and I know it's a process, give this a chance because I think it may be better for your career trajectory. And so I told Sean about it and he agreed. And we started both looking. I interviewed with the job here in Baltimore, and he started looking for a job in the area, and things worked out. And I must say that the last piece of this puzzle was my very clear decision on taking enough time off after this whole journey. And a lot of
Yes.
people, they wouldn't believe. They're like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? You're going to stop working and doing surgery for all these months. And I was like, there is no way I am taking less than 6 months after I'm done with all of this. It's 18 years since I finished high school to finally be able to get a job. So I took the time off and I just, allowed myself to recoup and to look back within myself on what are my real priorities as a human being and not just as an ophthalmologist. A lot changed in this period, in this sabbatical. I'm very grateful that I did it, and I highly recommend it to anybody who can do it and who's gone through this IMG process because it is truly grueling. I try to stay positive, but it has not been sunshine and rainbows the whole time. It has been extremely hard, both mentally and physically. but I'm happy to be on this side now.
Yes, you are refreshed on the backside of the sabbatical, and I loved following along your guys' travels to China especially, just
Oh,
'cause it
thank
it
you.
looked
That
like
was the
a
best part.
really dream trip.
It was amazing. I'm very grateful that I was able to connect with my husband's roots and his culture.
Just incredible. Oh my gosh. Well, again, I think that you deserve all the flowers. I agree with you. I think that about every IMG I've ever met. Some of us, because I was on this much more like very single, straight and narrow road. I have all the respect in the world for like this journey that you took, all of the time and energy and investment and sacrifices you made, because like years of long distance with a spouse is significant sacrifice. So I'm excited to cheer you on for this next chapter in your career.
It's definitely great to feel that you're now in a place where you can make your own decisions. Your skills are appreciated. You're serving a community that needs you. I think it's worth it. That's the type of feeling that I've been longing for. It's great. But I just want to say, I know we're wrapping up. I just want to say that for me, finding you and the other people that you managed to create this Hippocratic collective with was very important to me towards the end of my fellowship, because that was truly the time of my life where I had never been as close to giving up as I was in that last stretch, because it had been so long and
Mhm.
a lot was going on. Finding you and seeing you sharing your journey and the people that I managed to follow through you because you were mentioning or you had with you in the collective, it was such a breath of fresh air. You have no idea. So thank you for doing what you do. Truly, I mean it. And I hope that I keep seeing you shine and doing all these wonderful, fabulous things. I love following your fashion and your trips and your events. And I love that you're educating the medical trainees on the side of medicine that unfortunately has not been having enough spotlight as it should. So thank you, Francis. I'm truly a big fan.
Thank you. That's so kind. I mean, what I think all of us are doing, yourself included, is that when we share our stories, when we show up authentically, we're genuine people, we want to make the world a better place, and we share our stories. What's beautiful about it is that it gives other people permission to carve out their own journey. So, such a gift to connect with you.
Thank you, my dear. I can't wait to see you again in real life soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Surgeon Interrupted. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a review. Check out all of our other shows and content at hippocratic-collective.com.